Neighbors 2, Sorority Rising is the sequel to Neighbors, starring Seth Rogen, Rose Byrne, Zac Efron, and Chloe Grace Moretz. Now, the first Neighbors was a comedy that I actually thought was really good. I mean, the premise was really interesting, the humor hit really well, and the cast had really good comedic chemistry with each other. But actually, because the first Neighbors was really successful, it has now led to a sequel. So the question is, how is the sequel gonna hold up to the original? So this movie opens up, and Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne discover that they're gonna have a second baby, and with that they know they need to move to a nicer, bigger home in order to raise 2 kids together. So they decide to sell their old house. There's this one couple that really likes it and is really interested in buying it. It gets to the point where this couple is willing to take their house, but their house is officially put on a 30-day escrow. This means that for the next 30 days, if everything goes right with the house, there are no damages found or nothing shows up that will spook the neighbors, then the house is sold and everything is all set. But should anything come up at that point, these buyers can back out of it and the deal is off. Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne, they agree to these terms, and now they feel there's nothing that could go wrong. Then we flash forward a little bit later, and we get introduced to Chloe Grace Moretz and her friends. They're all a bunch of freshmen. They're looking for different sororities that they could join. However, they have a serious problem in the fact that sororities are not allowed to throw their own house parties. Only frats can. And when Chloe Grace Moretz and her friends go to these frat parties, they absolutely hate what they are like. Because frat parties aren't really places that treat girls with respect. I mean, literally, they come into these houses and guys are just coming up to them one by one and they're just all like, hey, so you're really hot and I'm really awesome. Do you want to go upstairs so I can totally crush your pussy? So as a result, Chloe Grace Moretz and her friends, they don't want to be subjected to that, but they still want to party in a way that's comfortable and suitable for girls. So with that, they decide to start their own sorority that can party and call it Kappa Nu. And where do they decide to move in? In the house right next to Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne, where Zac Efron and his fraternity were in the last movie. And speaking of Zac Efron, he has shown up. He's agreed to take these girls under his wing and teach them how to develop a great sorority. Now, Zac Efron's story in this movie was an area that I really liked in this, because he suffers from what a lot of college grads really do suffer from. I mean, he's struggling to find a job. He still doesn't really know what he wants to do yet. And all of his friends around him, they've all gotten jobs. They've all become successful. I mean, Dave Franco is getting married to his boyfriend. Yeah, I guess it turns out that even after all that talk about having sex with girls in the last movie, Dave Franco ended up being gay. I guess it just worked out that way. So because of all that, Zac Efron wants to feel part of something again. He wants to feel wanted. He wants to matter. And he knows by coaching this sorority that he will feel wanted again. But no, it's not all about that. No, he also wants to get revenge on Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne for shutting down Delta Psi. But Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne, they also know that they can't sell their house if a partying sorority is living next to them. So now it's back to trying to shut this sorority down. And it's at this point you discover that the movie is going into a very similar plot direction that the last movie did. And if I'm being honest, this was one of the areas that I wasn't the biggest fan of. Because as I've said before, comedies are my favorite movie genres. I love movies that can really make me laugh. So at the same time, I guess you could say maybe I'm a little harder on comedies than I am on other movie genres simply because I love them so much. And what a lot of comedy sequels suffer from is they use very similar plot elements from the original movie. I mean, The Hangover 2 did that, 22 Jump Street did that, but 22 Jump Street was able to execute it in a way where it was actually really funny, so, that one actually worked out. But when you see a lot of instances in this movie when Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne, they're trying to mess with a sorority and the sorority's trying to mess with them back, you look at it, it's just like, yeah, I have seen this before. So it does take a little bit away from this movie having the fresh factor going towards it. However, one moment does come when Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne had been able to infect the sorority's house with bed bugs. As a result, the sorority needs to use a lot of their money to fumigate the house, but at the same time, they're now left with less money to pay the rent that they need to pay. So they decide to come up with this plan to ruin all of the other fraternities and college groups out there that are selling weed so they can be the only group that does sell weed at the upcoming tailgate for their college. And Zac Efron, he tries to interfere. It's like, no, that's not the best way to go about it. This is the way you should do it. You gotta trust me on this. And you can tell the sorority is starting to get a little fed up with him over that, and eventually does get to a point where they basically tell him to piss off. And with that, Zac Efron goes over to Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne. He tells them that he's switching sides and he's gonna work with them to stop the sorority. After a really chaotic and insane chase at the tailgate that actually did lead to some funny moments, Seth Rogen, Rose Byrne, Zac Efron, they're able to steal the sorority's weed. So now Capanu is basically in deep shit because they know that if they don't get the money they need to pay the rent by the next day, they're gonna be kicked out of their house. And this forces them all to do what they were hoping they wouldn't have to do, but now they decide to throw a stereotypical frat party. So because of that, the girls are all dressing really slutty. They're telling everyone to invite everybody that they know. And through this, they are able to make a lot of money, but it's still not enough to pay off for their house. But then comes what I thought was one of the best moments of the movie. Not necessarily as a funny moment, but as a moment with surprisingly good heart. A lot of the girls are preparing to leave. Chloe Grace Moretz tries to stop them. But in this moment, her sorority sisters tell her that they want to save the house. They want to still be a sorority with her, but they don't want to turn into someone that they're not. And through this party, they are exactly doing that. And Chloe Grace Moretz is so terrified and so freaked out at the thought of her sorority splitting up because she brings up the fact that in high school, she didn't really have any friends. This is the first time she's really been a part of like a big group of girls that want to be with her. I mean, if you didn't have a lot of friends in high school, and I didn't, when you go to college and you do make a lot of friends, that really does become a family for you. You don't want to see that go. And Rose Byrne can hear all this happening, so she decides to, you know, turn on her mom mode, and she goes to talk to these girls. And she tells them that even if you don't make enough money to save this house, that doesn't mean this friendship between you all is over. She tells them that a house is not a sorority. They are the sorority. So it's at this point, Capanu just decides to say fuck it and just enjoy the last great party they'll have in this house. But then at this point, a lot of sororities now show up and they ask to join Capanu because they see that Capanu truly has become a sorority that can throw parties. So as a result, Capanu now makes a shit ton of money from that, and they now have more kids that they can fit in their house. So they decide to go to Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne's house because at this point, the buyers have backed out of the deal because of the sorority. And Capanu offers the two of them to pay for rent to use their house that they are moving out of as a second house for their sorority. So as a result, Capanu gets a second house. Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne are able to sell their house, and now they can move into their new one to raise their two daughters. And towards the end of this movie, we see that Zac Efron has finally found something that he feels can be a career for him. Dave Franco asked him to be his best man at his wedding. Zac Efron planned the whole wedding for him. So now Zac Efron has taken on a new job as being a wedding planner for gay weddings. So all in all, I think Neighbors 2 Sorority Rising is a pretty solid movie. I mean, the cast in this movie, they all do a really good job. Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne, they're really funny together. You really do buy them as loving, caring parents. They do say the word fuck a lot in front of their 2-year-old daughter. I really liked Chloe Grace Moretz's character. I love what she brought to this movie. Zac Efron, though, I think is hysterical in this movie. I mean, he really has shown that he is one of those very few Disney Channel stars who can go on and become something great in the movie business. I think he's really proven himself to be a really good comedic actor. I think he's definitely found his niche with comedies. However, like I said, this movie does borrow a lot of very similar plot elements from the first Neighbors, so that means some of the comedy and some of the jokes in this movie do fall flat at times. But in the end, I will say this was an enjoyable movie that definitely delivered some good laughs and was worth checking out. So that's all I gotta say, guys. Thank you so much for watching my video. Don't forget to leave a comment, like, subscribe, and I will see you all next time.